For thousands of years, people were afraid of snakes and treated them with caution. For ancient peoples, these reptiles were a symbol of evil, death, and danger. And this is not surprising because they possess very powerful venom, which can finish off not only small animals but also large predators as well as humans. Today we'll take a look at these venomous creatures in action. This is wildlife, and in this episode I'll show you the most dangerous snakes in the world. You'll also see what happens to animals after a snake bite. Let's go! Snake on the road. In Europe, you can often see deer on the roads, and in North America you can see some bears and moose. And in hot Brazil, you can easily run into a huge anaconda, as happened with the people in this video. The snake was lying on the edge of the road and didn't seem to pose a threat, but when people tried to pass, the giant attacked the car. And this giant was found in South Africa. A huge python blocked the road in the savannah, but unlike the anaconda from the previous video, it behaved politely and crawled away and let the driver pass. A giant from Bolivia. Those were some big snakes on the road, weren't they? But compared to this monster, they're just babies. The author of this video was walking through the forests of Bolivia when suddenly he came across a snake of colossal size. Apparently the snake was at least 33 feet long. The cameraman noticed the snake in time and hid behind the trees, so the monster didn't see him. This is good because who knows what it would have done with the witness in such a wilderness? It's unlikely it would have left him alone. In general, it was unclear what kind of snake it was, either an anomalous anaconda or a titanoboa. Yeah, that very snake thought to be extinct. Apparently, scientists made a mistake, and a few titanoboa survive to this day. Perhaps this is another one of them. The quality of this video leaves much to be desired, but still the size of the snake is clearly visible. Locals filmed a colossal snake crossing a road in the woods. Apparently, it was at least 33 feet long and weighed hundreds of pounds. It's one of the largest snakes ever caught on camera. To me, it couldn't be an ordinary anaconda. The reptile's too huge, even for an anaconda. However, perhaps I jumped to conclusions, because history knows quite a few cases of truly anomalous anacondas. The official record holder is considered to be an anaconda with a length of about 17 feet, but there are also unofficial record holders. For example, in 2016, workers were engaged in the construction of a hydroelectric power plant in Altamira, Brazil. As part of the work, they blew up the wall of one of the caves. When the smoke cleared and the dust settled, the workers were shocked to see a huge snake. It was an anaconda, which was about 33 feet long and weighed 882 pounds. That is, it was almost twice the size of the official record holder. There's no doubt in the trustworthiness of the pictures, not a bit of editing is here. The snake was so big that they couldn't lift it by themselves and had to use a scoop. It's not known exactly what happened to the giant afterwards, but official measurements were never taken. The Dominican monster. The same can be said of this snake discovered in the Dominican Republic in 2021. Once again, it was workers who noticed the snake, but not construction workers. The men were working in the jungle and clearing thickets when suddenly they came across this giant snake. The giant was not aggressive, but it interfered with the work, so it was necessary to move it. But as in the case of the Brazilian monster, it was impossible for the workers to do it on their own. They had to use machinery. It was at the moment of the snake's ascent that this incredible footage was taken. Even while in the air and hanging from the scoop, the snake almost touched the ground on both sides. It seemed that this monster was even bigger than the one that was hiding in the Brazilian cave before the explosion. Finding in Peru. This footage was taken in Peru in September 2013. The locals discovered an amazing find, a colossal anaconda that was resting in shallow water after eating some animal. This was evident from the anaconda's bloated belly. The locals lifted the giant with a concerted effort, and we can see that it's one of the largest snakes that humans have ever discovered. Record-breaking python. One of the largest snakes in the world is the Central African rock python. The body length of these reptiles can exceed 20 feet, and their weight can reach 220 pounds. But this applies only to record-breaking individuals. It seems that one of them is just before us. A man named Jason was outdoors in the South African town of Balito when he stumbled upon this giant. This Central African rock python was one of the largest ever caught on camera. The exact length of the giant is unknown, so I suggest you share your thoughts in the comments. But the length of the next snake from this episode is known for sure. Everything is known down to the centimeters and inches because this is the current official record holder. Her name is Medusa. It's a female reticulated python. In general, these snakes are very long in general. They're the longest of all snake species, but Medusa is large even by the standards of reticulated pythons. Her length is 25.1 feet, and her weight is 353 pounds. She lives in Kansas and is owned by Full Moon Productions Incorporated, where she's looked after by local workers. It's they who move the snake from one place to another. Medusa's usually fine with it, but if she doesn't like it, she'll have no trouble breaking out of the grip. She's got a lot of strength after all. The following video was shot in Africa, presumably in Zimbabwe, where the cameraman saw an abnormally long snake. The reptile was sitting in a ravine, peeking out of it, looking for potential prey. From this angle, it reminded me of the Loch Ness Monster. I still don't know exactly what kind of snake it was. Some say it was an abnormally huge black mamba. Others think it was a cobra, and still others are sure it was a Central African rock python. In any case, one thing's for certain, it's one of the largest snakes in history. However, it's no match for the snake, which many call the largest of all time. This is not some prehistoric Titanoboa remains. The giant was caught on camera in the middle of the 20th century, and it came as a shock to everyone. I'm talking about an incident that took place in 1959. Colonel Remy Van Leerd was circling in a helicopter in the Congo and saw a huge snake from above. He was so taken aback by it that he returned and circled around it several times to get a better look at it and photograph the monster. According to Remy, the snake's torso was brown-green and its belly was white. But much more interesting is the size. Remy said that the approximate length of the snake was 50 feet. That's much larger than any known modern snake. Remy could have taken better pictures, but he said that when he flew too close to the snake, it took a threatening pose and lifted its head and part of its body 10 feet above the ground. Colonel decided to fly away so as to not provoke the reptile. What do you think this monster was? An anomalous Central African rock python? A snake of unknown species? Or a Titanoboa that survived to this day and somehow made its way to Africa? Share your thoughts in the comments. All the snakes I've shown you can be safely called rare because such colossal individuals are not found very often. But what about other rare snakes? For example, those of which there are only a couple dozen left, a species that's dying out right now, and snakes that may become victims of poachers. Keep watching to see them all. St. Lucia racer. Right now, the St. Lucia racer is considered the rarest snake on the planet in terms of species. Population is in terrible condition, as there are currently only about 20 snakes of this species in the world. So the St. Lucia racer is also one of the rarest animals in general. This species was actually declared extinct in 1936, but was rediscovered on the island of Maria Major in 1973, where the snakes managed to survive thanks to the absence of mongooses. Currently, great efforts are being made to preserve and protect these snakes so that they do not become permanently and irrevocably extinct. Round Island boa. These snakes are common on Round Island, which belongs to Mauritius. Earlier, the Round Island boa was also found in Mauritius but became extinct there in the early 19th century due to predation by rats, which came to Mauritius and neighboring islands with sailors. The snake is also called the Round Island keel-scaled boa. It got this name from the fine keeled scales that cover its body. The situation with this species is much better than that with the St. Lucia racers, but not great either. Population is about 1,000 individuals. All thanks to a project in which several dozen boas were transported to the island of Gunner's Kin. Previously, the territory was cleared of goats, rabbits, and rats so that they wouldn't harm the boas and prevent them from reproducing. Santa Catalina rattlesnake. Rattlesnakes are known for their rattle, which they use to produce those very recognizable sounds. In fact, because of this, the snakes are called rattlesnakes. However, the Santa Catalina rattlesnake is unique because of the lack of a functioning rattle. It's believed that this snake species lost its rattle in an attempt to better adapt to its environment. Without the rattle, these snakes can sneak up on birds in the desert silently. However, the stealth mode does not really play into the hands of these snakes. They're actively hunted by wild cats. Also, these rattlesnakes are specially caught by poachers. As a result, the species is one of the rarest on the planet. Nevertheless, it's hoped that a recent project to reduce the number of wild cats on Isla Santa Catalina will help to conserve these snakes. Madagascar worm snake. At first glance, it's hard to believe that it's a snake. It looks more like an ordinary worm, doesn't it? But it's a real snake. A blind snake, to be exact. These creatures live in a small area in northeastern Madagascar. They're harmless to humans, but at the same time, these reptiles are predators. They hunt ants and termites in the sand, making life difficult for them. However, the trend is toward the Madagascar worm snake becoming completely extinct soon. The species is already in a vulnerable position, and human activity is only bringing the inevitable end closer. So the Madagascar termites and ants will soon be able to sleep in peace. Even one snake can wreak havoc, let alone several. Next, I'll tell you about the largest snake den in the world. The largest snake den in the world. In ancient Babylon, Assyria, Africa, and China, snakes were worshipped, feared, and attributed magical properties. People have always dreamed of taming snakes and turning their magical and healing power to their advantage, and therefore this reptile was revered among many peoples. In modern society, there are many who have a phobia of these reptiles, as well as those who sincerely admire these reptiles. Proof of the latter is the numerous flows of tourists in the Canadian province of Manitoba, where you can see the largest cluster of snakes on the planet. With the arrival of spring, tens of thousands of garter snakes crawl out of their hiding places near the swamps in a protected area called the Narcissus snake dens and create a cluster, usually consisting of more than 50,000 snakes. The reason lies in the beginning of the mating period. Usually the mating rituals last for 2 to 3 weeks. The males are the first to crawl out of their winter shelters. They wait impatiently for the females, and when they finally crawl out of the caves, the males immediately attack them. There are far fewer females than males, so there may be as many as a dozen suitors per lady. Because of the special zeal of the males, they even intertwine with each other and form a ball. According to many professors who study this particular area, there may be about 35,000 snakes in one of the Narcissus snake dens and 250,000 snakes in the entire area. A total of 4 such dens have been recorded in the area, and remarkably, they're all connected to each other by a path which is about 1.8 miles long. Fortunately, lovers about these reptiles with double tongues don't have to worry about their safety while watching such a fascinating spectacle. For tourists coming to Narcissus, special observation platforms have been built near the den. Granddaddy of hornets' nests. In the view of many people, there are good wasps and bad wasps. But scientifically speaking, the common yellow jackets are more common in everyday life. They're notoriously aggressive, predatory pests that stand out for their protective behavior because they can sting when they sense danger. These insects tend to build their nests underground or in abandoned rodent burrows, which means they have only one entrance to defend themselves. This colony seems to be an exception, though. This wasp nest was discovered in a shed in Patterson, Louisiana back in 2017. Pest control specialist Jude Verrett encountered, in his own words, the granddaddy of hornets' nests. This nest, consisting of dangerous wasps, consumed everything and anything in its path, taking up most of the ground space of the shed. But before the pest control specialist could begin to dismantle the nest, he was suddenly bombarded. The farther he went, the worse it got. As he began tearing apart the nest with his gloved hands, thousands of wasps appeared and began attacking him. They flew at Jude so aggressively that you could barely hear him speak in the original video recording. But it would take more than 1,000 or maybe tens of thousands of insects to stop Verrett from doing his job. Within 45 minutes, he cleared the entire shed without a single sting. Alabama wasps. When it gets warmer, most people in America celebrate it with a pool party or a picnic. But in Alabama, residents can ruin their summer holidays by discovering the skin-crawling insects I talked about earlier, those dangerous wasps. Usually, colonies of these devils form small nests of about 4,000 individuals in the summer, which tend to die in the cold winter. But when winters are warm, more and more of these colonies survive into the following summer. This leads to huge swarms that begin to build huge perennial nests all over the southeastern state. In the summer of 2006 in Alabama, a colony of more than 15,000 insects completely occupied the interior of this old car. From window to wheel, they covered the car with the paper-like material that makes up the inner layers of the nest. It's made of wood fiber, which the wasps chew and mix with their saliva, thus creating a paper pulp. They then spit it out and shape it into the shape they want. And if they're not stopped and the colony continues to grow, they'll continue to build further. Unfortunately, the owner of this car was convinced of this the hard way. However, this was only one of the staggering 90 super nests found that year. Some of them were even in stranger places, like this one for example, which was found inside of an old discarded mattress. You can see how the insects form the interior dividers of the nest around the insides of the mattress. They look like a honeycomb, but in reality there's nothing sweet about them. It's in these hexagonal infernal spaces that wasps store and raise their eggs, from which more insidious insects later hatch. It's lucky that no one had a chance to take a nap on this old mattress, otherwise the wake-up call would have been quite harsh and painful. Fortunately, after the summer of 2006, the region's residents were finally able to rest easy. A succession of cold winters returned, depriving the perennial insects' colonies of the opportunities to revive. However, that was the case until recently. In 2019, a quiet road in Shelby County suddenly came alive when a huge super nest was discovered on the side of the road. Researchers estimated that it was about 4.9 feet tall and 3.2 feet wide. About 15,000 individuals were hiding there. It doesn't look like the giant pest nest will disappear anytime soon. Sociable weaver. The sociable weaver is a relative of the most common sparrow, but it lives in the African Kalahari Desert. These birds build the largest, most complex, and fantastically arranged nests. Of course, such an engineering masterpiece is built not by one or two birds, but by the entire colony. The very name of this African bird indicates its preference to live in communities rather than in separate families. In fact, each couple of birds makes one small nest to raise their chicks. But the result of working together is an entire mound of up to 32.8 feet in length and 6.5 to 10 feet in height. Sociable weavers build nests in trees or other tall objects with enough room for about a couple hundred birds to settle there. Their homes are well-structured and maintain a suitable temperature compared to that outside the nest. For example, while outside temperatures range from 60 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit, inside temperatures are kept at 44 to 46 degrees Fahrenheit level. The nests consist of separate chambers, in each of which a couple of birds lives with their chicks. The entrance to each chamber is separate and located at the bottom of the nest. All entrances can be provided with cross sticks to protect them from such predators as snakes. Australian termites. Australian termites towers are up to 26.2 feet high and are a striking example of animal architecture. Each tower can hold 2 to 3 million individuals. By chewing grass together with thorns and soil particles, termites recycle it, resulting in material for housing which hardens like clay. Considering the size of their own bodies, which is about 3 millimeters, termites build the largest structure on the planet. If they're increased to human proportions, such a building would reach a height of several miles. Termite mounds may be classified as an important, rare, and successful adaptation. Scientists believe that termites arrived in the southern continent about 20 million years ago. Once in Australia, they settled in and began to live the old arboreal way of life. Soon the climate changed, became considerably hotter and drier, and the forests which had covered the continent quickly became thin and retreated towards the rather wetter coastlines. These changes forced termites to adapt to eating grass and fallen leaves, as they lost the ability to digest wood on their own. It also forced them to move their nests from branches to the ground and learn to erect termite mounds without the support of trunks. According to scientists, this is reminiscent of the evolution of the planet's other greatest builders, humans, whose ancestors also lived in trees several million years ago. Titanoboa from the Amazon River. In 2009, the remains of more than 20 snakes, which according to scientists reached a length of 42.6 feet or more and weighed about a ton, were found in a deep mine in Colombia. The excavations were made near the Colombian town of Cerrillon. So the snake was internationally named Titanoboa cerrillonensis. It's believed that Titanoboa lived on the planet as much as 58 million years ago. For several million years, it was one of the largest animals in the world. To understand how imposing this animal looked, you can compare its length to the long neck of a giraffe. Two giraffes stacked on their sides would have been shorter than one titanoboa stretched out to its full length. This colossal snake looked like a modern boa constrictor, but acted more like today's Amazon anaconda. It was a slippery swamp dweller and a huge reptile capable of eating almost any animal. Its body diameter was close to the size of a human waist. The snake was about 3 feet wide and weighed over a ton. Now Titanoboa has become a kind of new Loch Ness monster, which people try to find and capture on camera to this day. But why do people never give up hope of encountering the ancient creature? Because there are still many places in South America where no man has gone before. Because the region is so poorly explored, there may well be animals thought to be extinct or unknown to science lurking there. That's why people always want to catch Titanoboa on camera. When this image appeared on the internet, the caption stated that it had nothing to do with Photoshop. The black and white photo was taken at the mouth of the Amazon River. The huge snake frightened the locals and caused problems, so they decided to deal with the giant on their own. The authors of the photo above managed to calculate the size of the animal, focusing on the surrounding objects and the distance between the photographer and the snake. The body length of the snake in the picture was about 115 feet, and its width was 29.5 inches. This black and white photo was taken in 1948, but it still excites the public, fascinated by fantastic animals. By the way, a logical question arises. How could the photographer get so close to the monster? It's said that the military immobilized the snake, shooting more than 500 bullets into it. Titanoboa from Congo. In 1959, Remy van Leerd was serving as a colonel in the Belgian Air Force at Kamina Air Base in Congo. Returning from a mission by helicopter, he reported seeing a huge snake as he flew over the forest. He described a snake that was about 49 feet long with a triangular head that was 24 inches wide. If his estimates were accurate, the giant he saw was one of the largest snakes that's ever existed in the modern world. Colonel van Leerd described the snake as having dark green and brown upper scales and a white belly. When he saw the reptile, he ordered the pilot to turn around and make another flyby, at which point the snake raised its front end by as much as 10 feet, as if preparing to strike, making it possible to see its belly. However, flying so low, van Leerd was afraid that the helicopter might be too close to the giant and ordered the pilot to return to the base. If you think that Titanoboa hunted like a modern boa constrictor, wrapping itself around its prey and squeezing until it suffocated, you're mistaken. In fact, the snake attacked its prey in a more dramatic way. It would dive partially into the water, and then when its prey was in range, Titanoboa suddenly pounced on it and grabbed it with its massive jaws around the trachea. Because of its size and musculature, this reptile could easily handle adult alligators. Titanoboa nowadays. In spite of all existing pictures, the existence of Titanoboa today is still just a guess with no official confirmation. But let's imagine how the animal world would change if Titanoboa were not extinct. It's very difficult to predict the turn of events in this case, but I'll nevertheless try to suggest how this snake could fit into modern life. Titanoboa inhabited swamps and rivers in ancient times. Therefore, in modern times, it would hardly want to change its principles and to change its place of residence. More likely, the forest of the Amazon River would have been the home of the ancient giant. Should people be afraid of a Titanoboa attack? Scientists don't know all the subtleties of the ancient snake's relationship with humans because it became extinct long before modern humans, but based on the anaconda's passive attitude to humans, we can assume that Titanoboa would have behaved the same way. However, crocodiles, river dolphins, fish, manatees, and even land mammals would have a hard time. The voracious snake would change the food chain, and some species would simply cease to exist. Scientists have a different view on this. They think that the existence of Titanoboa is unlikely these days, and the reason's quite simple. It lies in climate change, which would acutely affect the cold-blooded reptile. Titanoboa were perfectly adapted to high temperatures but could not tolerate low temperatures, so the movement of the continents and the gradual cooling led to the slow extinction of these snakes. However, these same scientists don't deny that Titanoboa may return because of global warming. Many years of adaptation to higher temperatures caused the animals to grow in size, producing more carbon dioxide. Modern anacondas and boa constrictors may evolve into a species similar to Titanoboa, but it'll take millions of years to do it. And what do you think? Do you believe that Titanoboa are still alive today and lurking in the uncharted jungles of South America? Or are these snakes long since extinct? Share your thoughts in the comments, and stay tuned. There's a few more giant snakes further in this episode that are 100% alive, unlike Titanoboa. The biggest snake on Earth. The largest snake in the world today, judging by its body length, is the reticulated python, so called because of the complex reticulated pattern on its skin. The flattened head and the light zigzag pattern on the sides surrounded by brown scales are the distinguishing features of this reptile. The reticulated python weighs about 165 pounds. It's ubiquitous in Southeast Asia, from the lowlands to the foothills. Currently the largest snake on the planet, information about which is confirmed, is just a reticulated python, or rather a female reticulated python named Medusa. This reptile reaches a length of 25.1 feet and weighs almost 352 pounds. Medusa was caught in the United States in October 2011. She currently lives in the Full Moon Productions Park in Kansas. Medusa was cared for by an entire staff who carry the snake with their combined efforts and feed her abundantly. Medusa eats rabbits, deer, and even small wild boars, which she's given twice a month. Anaconda. The common anaconda is huge. On average, it's 13 to 16 feet long. According to official data, the largest caught female anaconda reached 17 feet in length with a weight of 215 pounds. It's worth noting that there are many reports of anacondas longer than 20 or even 32 feet, but none of such observations is reliable. Scientists explain the reason for this confusion. In their opinion, it's very difficult to measure the genuine length of a living anaconda because of its natural characteristics. It's possible to measure a dead anaconda, but there's a nuance. Its scales stretch after death, and stretching a live green anaconda to its full length to measure it is almost impossible. In addition, many people, when they see a green anaconda in the wild, are frightened by its size and estimate it inadequately, which leads to exaggerations. Gigantifus. The next snake is far from being as famous as the superstar Titanoboa, but it was no less dangerous. Before the discovery of Titanoboa, Gigantifus was generally considered to be the largest snake of all time, and given that Titanoboa was discovered less than 15 years ago, it was only recently that this reptile was the leader of all time. The snake lived on the territory of today's northern Sahara, in the region of Algeria and Egypt. Gigantifus completely justifies its name, because its length could be nearly 36 feet, not much less than that of Titanoboa. However, in terms of weight, it was inferior to the Colombian boa constrictor. Its weight was about 1,500 pounds less. The head of the ancient giant was not very large, but the snake was able to open its jaws so wide that it could swallow even an incredibly large prey. Scientists believe that Gigantifus even hunted prehistoric crocodiles, elephants, and sharks. Most likely it wrapped itself around its prey and then squeezed its muscle until its prey died of suffocation. It would then swallow its prey whole and digest it for several weeks. In this respect, this snake, like Titanoboa, resembles modern anacondas. These South American reptiles hunt in a similar way. Some prehistoric snakes hunted sharks and crocodiles, and some even hunted dinosaurs. Sanaja is just such a snake. In general, Sanaja is a genus of snakes, but it includes only one species, Sanaja indicus. By the name, it's clear that this monster lived on the territory of modern India. It was lucky enough to live in the era of the dinosaurs, when their time was coming to an end. But the dinosaurs themselves were clearly uncomfortable sharing their habitat with this snake, Scientists have found fossils of Sanaja, from which they found out that the snake ate sauropods, herbivorous dinosaurs. It's even possible that Sanaja hunted titanosaurs, one of the largest dinosaurs of all time. However, Sanaja mostly hunted the babies or eggs of the dinosaurs. Adults were too tough for Sanaja. After all, the size didn't allow these snakes to engage in fierce battles with dinosaurs. By the way, Sanaja was not a small snake. These snakes were as big as 11.5 feet long. Many modern anacondas are similar in size. Wanambi. The strangler snake is what scientists often call Wanambi, a genus of large, extinct snakes that includes 2 species. They were about 16 to 20 feet long and lived in Australia. Moreover, unlike the previous snakes from this episode, Wanambi became extinct relatively recently. The last representatives of the genus disappeared from the face of the earth around 40 to 50,000 years ago. So why is the snake called a strangler? All because of the peculiarities of hunting. Being a non-venomous predator, Wanambi killed its prey by strangulation. Sometimes it drowned it. Because of the small size of its head, only small preys were available to it. However, I don't think the kangaroos that Wanambi hunted could be called small prey. What's interesting is that this snake lived at the same time as humans, the first Aboriginal Australians. They quickly realized that Wanambi was a danger, so they forbade children to play in the potential habitat of these snakes near reservoirs. Children could only approach them with adults. Some experts claim that this animal, along with other Australian megafauna, became extinct as a result of the actions of Aboriginal Australians. Urlungur. And here is the neighbor of the Wanambi. Urlungur was also part of the Australian megafauna. It was the top predator of its time. By the way, it belonged to the same family as Wanambi. The enemy of the dinosaurs, Sanaja, also belonged there. Interestingly, Urlungur is often associated with the rainbow serpent, a character in the mythology of the Aboriginal Australians. It's believed that the scientific name of the reptile came from this serpent, which was the patron saint of the sky, water, rain, fertility, shamans, and healers. Both Urlungur and Wanambi are called prototypes of the mythical serpents in which the ancient Aboriginal Australians believed. In this episode, there's also a place for another mysterious and mythical creature, a snake with 10 heads. Many Asian peoples claim that such reptiles existed in ancient times and were no less dangerous than Titanoboa or Wanambi. Do you believe in the existence of these snakes? Write in the comments. And keep watching to see a 100% real snake with several heads from our time, as well as other dangerous modern snakes. Here comes the promised mutant. A resident of the Indian state of Maharashtra caught on camera a 2-headed snake, which is very rare to find. The total length of the reptile was about 4.3 inches, and each of its heads was about 0.7 inches long. Because of its genetic abnormality, it had a low chance of surviving in the wild, so it was taken away by representatives of the Rescue Fund. But what's more interesting, it was a very dangerous mutant. The Russell's viper was caught on camera. To understand how dangerous it is, one fact is enough. It's one of the so-called Big Four venomous snakes that most often bite people. If that fact is not enough for you, here's another one. It's the most common venomous snake in South Asia, the bites of which are extremely dangerous to humans. More than half of the snake bites recorded there are of this species. The Russell's viper is also dangerous for other snakes, with which it can engage in fierce fights. Black mamba. This snake also likes to fight. However, ordinary snakes are not enough for it. The black mamba can defeat not only its congeners but even a lioness. A few bites of the black mamba are enough to make the queen of the jungle have terrible convulsions, which are unstoppable. The same can be said of many other animals in Africa. For example, hyenas, which can also become prey of the black mamba. This isn't surprising because the black mamba is incredibly dangerous, aggressive, and venomous. Its venom is highly toxic and is considered one of the fastest acting of all snakes on the planet. In some cases, it only takes 45 minutes for the victim to die. The rapid action of the venom correlates with the speed of the black mamba. At short distances, it develops a speed of about 9 to 12 miles per hour. There are reports that some black mambas have successfully chased even a galloping horse and a car. It's not known whether this is in fact true, but there's no doubt about the swiftness of the black mamba. Many people die from the black mamba bites every year, but in terms of lethality and danger, the mamba is inferior to the saw-scaled viper. Perhaps many of you have never heard of this snake. If so, you should know, according to statistics, it is the deadliest snake on the planet. More people in the world die from its bites every year than from the bites of any other snake. And this is a little strange because the saw-scaled viper is not as reckless as the black mamba. When encouraging a human or other potential victim, it doesn't attack immediately. First, it warns with a loud rustling sound, which it makes by rubbing its jagged rings. This is usually the first and last warning. If the victim doesn't leave, the saw-scaled viper bites painfully. Powerful toxins enter the bloodstream, dramatically reducing blood clotting. As a result, the victim often dies not even from the venom itself, but from blood loss. Every fifth person bitten by this snake becomes a victim. But there's also good news. There is an antidote for the venom of this snake. Mojave rattlesnake. Do you still remember the lightning-fast black mamba? Well, the Mojave rattlesnake is, in a sense, the opposite of the African monster. While the black mamba kills quickly, the Mojave rattlesnake kills slowly. Found primarily in the Mojave Desert of America, this animal is often called the most dangerous snake in North America. Despite its short length of about 3.5 feet, it's a whole storehouse of terrible toxins. The venom of this rattlesnake has delayed symptoms. 45 minutes after a black mamba bite, a person can die. 45 minutes after a bite from this snake, nothing at all can happen. Often, symptoms don't appear until a few hours later, but by this point, the countdown has already begun. A person has trouble seeing, difficulty speaking and swallowing, muscle weakness, and difficulty breathing. If measures are not taken in time, the bitten person can no longer be saved. We've talked about Titanoboa and other prehistoric creatures. Next, let's go back to our time. Now I'll show you what happens to animals after a snake bite. Lion. Let's start with the king of the jungle. The lion is a very powerful and resilient animal. It can deal with a buffalo, a giraffe, a hyena, a leopard, a cheetah, and many other African creatures. But snakes are a big threat for lions. A lion may simply not notice a snake and it'll bite it. Some bites go without consequences, but after some bites, there are a lot of troubles. For example, in this footage, you see a lioness that's been bitten by a venomous snake. It stands in the middle of a muddy puddle, breathing heavily. Soon the lioness begins to convulse. It twitches, growls, turns its head, and just suffers, trying its best to take away the pain. There's another lioness with cubs nearby. Unfortunately, they can't do anything. Their congener's doomed. A few more minutes will pass and the lioness will die. Usually, such a reaction occurs after the bite of the black mamba. This is the most dangerous snake for lions. One dose of its venom is enough to finish off 15 adult humans. One lion is about 3 to 4 adult humans by weight, so one black mamba bite is enough. By the way, this is roughly what happens to the blood of victims after a black mamba and other venomous snake bites. In this experiment, you can see the effect of the venom. Getting into the blood, it causes it to clot. As a result, the liquid blood turns into jelly and clogs the blood vessels, which inevitably leads to death. Honey badger. The lion's neighbor in Africa, the honey badger, also regularly encounters snakes. Of course, it often gets it too, and the reptiles bite it. Given the mass of the animal of about 22 pounds and its small size in general, we can assume that a venomous snake will finish it off much faster than the lion. But here everything is not so simple. Firstly, the reptile has to try very hard to bite through the thick skin of the honey badger. Even the teeth and claws of large big cats can't always penetrate it. Secondly, if the venom gets into the animal's body, it doesn't die. The honey badger may convulse, but after that it'll simply fall asleep for a couple of hours. Unlike lions, the predator will wake up and go about its business. Sleeping after a venomous snake bite is something new. Not surprisingly, with such superpowers, honey badgers are not afraid to engage in a fight with snakes, as well as other venomous creatures. For example, it can devour an extremely dangerous scorpion alive, without even paying attention to its sting. Also, the honey badger is not afraid of bees. Their venom has no effect on honey badgers. So the animals boldly destroy bees' nests to eat honey. Because of its love for honey, the honey badger actually got its name. Elephant. The animal world is astonishingly illogical. If the small honey badger only falls asleep for a couple of hours after being bitten by a venomous snake, the largest land animal of the planet suffers a lot. Like the honey badger, the elephant is difficult to penetrate. Its skin is about an inch thick, so many snakes would rather break their teeth than to bite through the giant skin. Sometimes it happens. In such a case, the elephant is doomed to long suffering. Due to its large size, the elephant will die for a long time. For example, in this footage, we see an elephant after being bitten by a snake. It lies in the mud and can't get up. Not only is it stuck, but it has less and less strength because of the venom that's gradually spreading through its body. But this animal was lucky. It was found by the locals who helped it. The elephants that people do not find die from the venom of the most powerful snakes for long hours. Still, snakes prefer to attack easier targets than lions and elephants. Rabbits are among their most common targets. In this footage, we see an eastern diamondback rattlesnake hunting a rabbit. The snake is found in the southeastern United States. Its venom is very dangerous. The mortality rate after the bite is 10 to 30%. The good news is that the snake is not very aggressive and doesn't attack people so often. But it attacks rabbits very often. This rabbit smelled trouble and bounced away, but for some reason continued to sit in place. Although the eastern diamondback rattlesnake is not very fast, the rabbit would easily run away from it. It bounces away one more time, but again continues to sit in place. On the third time, the snake does not forgive this behavior. It bites the animal again, and it bounces away, this time in pain. The rabbit continues to sit in place, but now it can do nothing more. The venom gradually spreads through its body. In just a few seconds, the big-eared creature falls down and convulses. I think you've already figured out what this means. The rabbit gradually falls asleep. From time to time, it still jerks its head and legs, but in a couple of minutes it freezes completely. This rattlesnake has really fast-acting venom. By the way, it wasted no time and began to eat its easy prey right on the spot. Snakes also deal with birds. As a rule, it's birds that attack snakes, not vice versa. Usually eagles do this. These brave raptors can catch a sea snake right out of the water on the fly, or they can finish off a snake on the ground, pressing them firmly to the surface. But snakes get their revenge on birds too. However, in this footage, it was not the eagle that got it, but the heron. A snake got hold of it near a body of water. The snake's grip turned out to be firm. The heron tried to escape, but the reptile wouldn't let it go. Even beak work didn't help. The snake didn't pay attention to the bite of the bird. Meanwhile, more and more venom was entering the heron's blood, making the bird weaker and weaker. Eventually, it managed to break free and escape from the snake. The heron comes ashore, but we see the outcome of the confrontation. It's weakened and cannot fly. Most likely, the venom has already taken effect, so the feathered creature doesn't have much time left. Dog. It's one thing when snakes bite wild animals, but it's quite another when our beloved pets encounter them. In this regard, dogs are the ones that get hurt the most. A dog can be bitten on a walk or even at home, and stray dogs, needless to say, often become victims of snakes. Bites can manifest themselves in different ways. For example, look at these dogs that have been bitten in the muzzles. They end up swollen, like after a bee sting. It may look funny from the outside, but there's really not much to laugh about. These poor creatures are in a lot of pain. They were bitten by dangerous rattlesnakes that could kill a dog. Fortunately, everything was good. These dogs soon recovered. But not everyone is so lucky. If a dog doesn't get help, it will convulse and spasm, just like a big lion or a small rabbit. If it gets to that point, the dog is unlikely to be helped. Also, some dogs may start going around in circles after a bite. They get lost in space and have a lot of creepy symptoms on top of that. And yet, even dogs are not so often victims of venomous snakes. More often, snakes attack various rodents. In many reptiles, rodents make up a large part of the diet. First of all, I'm talking about rats and mice. Look at this rattlesnake lying in the same enclosure as a rat. It's already making its trademark sound. Its rattle is working 100%, which means that the attack is not far off. And so the snake makes a quick lunge and bites the rat sharply. The timer started. In just a couple of seconds, the rat starts jumping in pain, then freezes, and lastly it convulses for a while. It only takes a minute for the rat to die. And here is the next prey. The snake bites it sharply, and the rat immediately starts scurrying around the enclosure in pain. It gets close to the snake, walks around the other side of the snake, and lies down next to it. The reptile doesn't even do anything. It knows that its powerful venom has already taken effect. A minute passes, and the rat is defeated. The snakes then eat the rats and mice that they have thus neutralized. These rodents are small, so even small snakes can swallow them in no time. Speaking of mice, snakes hunt them in a similar way. They stalk them, choose the best moment, and then make that fatal lunge. Look how this snake finished off this white mouse. It bit it sharply. The mouse began to rush around the container and try to get out, but literally in 10 to 15 seconds, it stopped moving. And here's another version of the hunt. The mouse was close to the snake, so the snake calmly grabbed it and injected its venom into it. Since the snake held the mouse tightly for a few seconds, the prey died very quickly. Within moments, the rodent was defeated. You bet, after all, we've just seen the inland taipan and the coastal taipan in action. These are extremely venomous snakes. The inland taipan is in fact the most venomous land snake on the planet. One full dose of its venom is enough to kill not one, not even 10, but 250,000 mice. The coastal taipan is not far behind its relative and can kill thousands of mice at once. As we've already found out, the snake is the model of a venomous creature, capable of destroying anyone. But there are creatures with far more dangerous venom. Next, I'll tell you which animal has 100 times more venom than the king cobra. It would be logical to assume that the king cobra is preceded by some other snake. It does make sense, but I'm not talking about a reptile, but about the box jellyfish. Members of this particular class of cnidarians are far more venomous than the king cobra. 100 times more venomous is just a guess. In fact, there can be even more venom of the box jellyfish, and it itself is much more toxic than that of the long snake. And no wonder, because many experts unanimously say that the box jellyfish is the most venomous animal in the world. The most dangerous representatives of box jellyfish are considered the sea wasp and the irukandji jellyfish. Tiny irukandji jellyfish has many meters-long tentacles that cause a number of hellish symptoms, and the sea wasp is capable of killing 60 people in 3 minutes. All in all, contact with any box jellyfish is a real nightmare. Their venom is a mixture of the most dangerous toxins on the planet, paralyzing the nervous system, affecting blood vessels, shutting down the lungs, and doing other horrors. Another danger is that box jellyfish are usually transparent and extremely difficult to spot. As for snakes, the king cobra is easily beaten on land by the inland taipan, an inhabitant of Australia and the most venomous land snake on the planet. In terms of recognition, the inland taipan is far from being a star like the world-famous king cobra, but its venom is 100 times cooler, literally. Actually, I'm lying. Scientists have discovered that the venom of the inland taipan is about 180 times more powerful than that of the king cobra. In this footage, you can see the process of milking an inland taipan. This must be what the most dangerous job in the world looks like. This man extracted about 45 milligrams of venom from this monster. This small amount of venom is enough to send 100 people or 250,000 mice to Kingdom Come. One good thing is the inland taipan is not the most aggressive snake. Unlike, for example, the coastal taipan, it's very vicious and also extremely venomous congener. In addition, the inland taipan lives in far remote places from humans. One would have to try and go a long way to encounter it in the wild. Steve Irwin did it just to capture the inland taipan and show it to us. How brave this Australian was. The inland taipan is just one of many extremely venomous animals in the world that you'd best stay away from. But there are other incredibly toxic creatures, from dangerous fish, bright frogs, and creepy ants to a venomous mammal. Stay tuned to see them all. Geography cone. How many of you like to collect shells on the beach? Or maybe you're such a big shell lover that you go snorkeling and look for shellfish on the bottom of the sea. Well, good for you. But be careful and know your enemy. This is the enemy. These are cone snails, a family of predatory snails. In fact, they completely contradict the snail stereotype. Cone snails are very fast and extremely dangerous. Cone snails are equipped with a harpoon, which they use to attack their prey and then ruthlessly eat it. This happens very quickly. The prey has no time to understand anything, and if it does, it dies very quickly, because cone snails are some of the most venomous creatures in the world. The geography cone is considered the most dangerous in this respect. The venom of this species is deadly not only to fish but also to humans. Unlike many other cone snails, the geography cone is very aggressive. It's the one that's killed the most people in the world among its brightly colored congeners. The venom spreads through the body very quickly. In a matter of minutes, a person experiences a spectrum of monstrous effects and symptoms, from pain and numbness to muscular paralysis and cardiac arrest. Stonefish. Something similar happens after contact with the stonefish, that frowning and perpetually discontented fish, which is the most venomous fish on the planet. In relation to humans, the stonefish is not as aggressive as the geography cone, but it is no less dangerous. The fish disguises itself in the water as a stone, which is why it can be overlooked. When a person steps on the fish, a toxin sprays from the barbed spines of its dorsal fin and enters the newly opened wound. The person feels a severe pain. The rest is a matter of luck. If the prick wasn't deep and the fish didn't inject much venom, then it'll be limited to very unpleasant symptoms, from which the person may be treated for weeks and months. If the spine penetration was deep, it could end in paralysis, necrosis, and death. Poison dart frog. It's easy not to notice a stonefish in the water and even more in muddy water, but it's hard not to notice such bright frogs among the jungles of South America. Usually frogs are green, but in this case it's as if nature made life easier for us by making them distinguishable. All because poison dart frogs are extremely poisonous. Despite their tiny size of a couple of centimeters, they can easily kill a person, and they don't even need to raise any spines like the stonefish or bite like the inland taipan. Just contact with the skin or mucosa is enough, and a person can be severely poisoned. So Coyote Peterson, the man who now holds the poison dart frog, is taking a big risk. This video blogger is just reckless. But it's unlikely he'd be as brave holding the golden poison frog, the most dangerous of poison dart frogs. This species of frog is one of the most poisonous vertebrates on the planet. Local tribes use the venom of these frogs to lubricate arrowheads. Just one such frog can be enough for several dozen arrowheads. By the way, interestingly enough, the toxicity of a poison dart frog can be turned off. The fact is that they don't produce the poison on their own but get it from their food, which includes toxic insects. If you take a poison dart frog and put it on a different diet, it will eventually just become a regular and safe frog. Harvester ant. Have you ever been stung by a bee? I'm sure many people have had that experience. You must agree it was unpleasant. But it's much better to be stung by a bee than stung by a harvester ant. The bad news is these ants are found almost all over Eurasia, Australia, Oceania, and Africa, and are also the most venomous bugs on the planet. Their venom is 20 times more powerful than that of a bee. The harvester ant is extremely ruthless. It attacks the prey with its pincers and literally stuffs the prey with venom, causing a severe pain. It takes 350 bites to kill a human. Well, even if you manage to get all these bugs off you in time, the pain of the bite will subside only after 8 hours. Yeah, mammals can be toxic too, though rarely. The platypus is just such a case. Didn't see that coming? Well, it's understandable, because platypuses are cute and unassuming creatures. They have funny limbs, a funny duck's beak, and the animal itself swims funny. At the same time, the platypus, though a mammal, lays eggs and is also capable of detecting weak electric fields, like catfish. In short, the platypus is a hodgepodge of all sorts of animals. Knowing this, it's not surprising to hear that the platypus is also venomous. Pay attention to the animal's hind limbs. There are sharp spurs there. They're connected to the crural gland, which produces a complex cocktail of toxins during the mating season. This cocktail can finish off a dingo dog or other small animal. Now the platypus doesn't seem so funny and cute anymore, does it? But don't stress too much. The platypus venom is not fatal for humans, although it is painful and causes a host of unpleasant symptoms. That's it for today. Are you afraid of snakes? Let me know in the comments, and thank you for watching.